So you're going to watch a video on the Maya, so I don't want to talk too much more about them, but I just want to show you just a couple of images so you can see kind of what their art looks like. So maybe if you see it in the future, you'll be able to recognize it as Maya art. It is very distinctive. I always think it has almost like a soft curving line, pillowy effect, especially in some of the relief sculpture. So here's some pottery here. And then here is Lord Pakal's sarcophagus, which you will learn about in one of your videos. Also, one of the things is when archaeologists first started investigating the Maya, they really thought they were this peaceful civilization. They talked about them like the Greeks, which they also viewed as this peaceful civilization, which we know is really not true. And they thought that until they saw stuff like this. So these are some really breathtaking, gorgeously preserved and gorgeously colorful mural paintings found here at this site in Mexico. But they show a feast and a celebration, but they also show human sacrifice as well. So the Maya definitely did practice human sacrifice. Here's just a few more images from my trip when I went to a research trip in Mexico a few years ago. And here's another one of the Bonampak that we were just looking at. So you can see they're just really vivid, well-preserved mural paintings. Here's kind of a graphic image of basically the sacrificial victims. So here this guy is kind of freaking out and is like kind of holding in his blood, and his guts are kind of falling out of his arms. So pretty graphic there. And so once archaeologists discovered this, they could no longer say that the Maya were a peaceful people. Instead, they did practice human sacrifice. Here's some beautiful jade work. One of the things I do like to mention even now is when we talk about the Maya, and I am trying to be brief here, I promise. A couple years ago, on December 21st, 2012, people kind of freaked out a little bit because they believed that the world would end because the Maya predicted it. The Maya, what they actually predicted was the end of an era. So it was sort of like the end of a century for us. And then they believed that a new century would begin, just like when we had 1999, and then it turned into 2000. So I just like to always point that out because people are like, oh, but the world was supposed to end and the Maya were wrong. No, they weren't wrong. We were just not talking about the same thing. We're having two different conversations. We thought the world would end because I thought that's what they were saying, but really they were just saying, no, this is the end of an era, and then the next era begins. Okay, so the Maya are really interesting. You have a couple videos to watch about them, but now moving on to our next culture. So the next culture we're going to talk about is Teotihuacan. So they were located about 30 miles northeast of modern-day Mexico City. And now Teotihuacan is kind of a big deal. It emerged as a significant center of commerce and manufacturing. Now let me just make it clear that we are no longer talking about the Maya. This is a separate culture. Did they interact? Absolutely. But this is a separate culture. So Teotihuacan emerged as a significant center of commerce and manufacturing. It had high quality obsidian. They made tools, and they also had pottery. Made pottery. Famous pottery, apparently. It was really the first large city-state in the Americas, and it flourished from about 100 to 750 CE. Like the Olmec and the Maya, they grew the common Mesoamerican staple crop foods, particularly corn and also beans and squash. At its height, from about 350 to 650 CE, Teotihuacan covered nearly 9 square miles and had a population of about 200,000 people. This was the largest city in America at this time, as far as we know of. It was also one of the largest cities in the world at that time. Teotihuacan's principal monuments include the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. Both of these are named by archaeologists. We don't know the name that the Teotihuacans would have called them. The Pyramid of the Sun is the largest of the monuments there. It's about 206 feet high and 720 feet on each side of its base. It's similar but not as tall as the largest Egyptian pyramid at Giza. It was built over a 4-chambered natural cave, so there's actually a natural cave beneath this structure with a spring in it. This was originally the focus of worship at this site, and it connects, by having this cave and the spring, this connects the site to the power of the sacred landscape, of the natural landscape. So it gives the site this sacredness and prestige. So it's not just a random site. Instead, it was chosen specifically because of this cave and this special spring. The building, which we're looking at up here, rises in a series of sloping steps to a flat platform where there was a two-room temple. It once stood there at the top, no longer stands there today. You can see that it had a monumental staircase that led from level to level up the side of the pyramid to the temple platform. And the exterior wouldn't have been plain like it is today. Instead, it would have been faced with stone and stucco, and of course would originally have been painted. The Pyramid of the Moon, which is depicted right here, is a bit smaller at the north end, and it's at the north end of the main avenue. So here's the map. This is, oh, here's the Pyramid of the Sun, and here's the Pyramid of the Moon. So you can see, looking at this, that the Pyramid of the Sun does look bigger. And the Pyramid of the Moon faces a large plaza, and both are built to mimic mountains and to recall the power of the mountains. You see, this is a lovely picture how you can see how the pyramid sort of mimics the shape of this mountain. Just gorgeous. And really what they were going for. So these temples have been very reconstructed by archaeologists, and the reconstruction is actually terrible. So when we look at the pyramids today, this is what they look like. They were actually meant to look more like these. They were meant to have these talud, tablero, architectural techniques. So if you look at this, you can kind of see more what it would have originally looked like. So this is not correct and kind of upsetting. At the southern end of the ceremonial center is the Ciudadela, and that's right here. There's a vast sunken plaza surrounded by temple platforms, one of the city's principal religious and political centers. The plaza could hold more than 60,000 people, and its focal point is the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, which is what you're looking at here. Again, they're using talud tablero slopes and panel construction. The sloping base of the talud of each platform is supported by the tablero, or entablature, that rises vertically. And it's surrounded by a frame and often filled in with sculptural decoration. This is really the hallmark of the teotihuacan architectural style. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent has gone through several building phases during the time of the city. It was enlarged several times. This is actually a typical practice of Mesoamerican architecture. And with each enlargement, they would completely enclose the previous structure. So they basically just build on top and encase the old structure. And so this is great for archaeologists because they can dig under these layers of temples and find even older temples. So kind of exciting for archaeologists. On the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, we see huge feather serpent heads, like the ones that you see here. So as you can see, it has kind of a serpent head, and then you can literally see the feathers coming out there. These could weigh over 4 tons apiece. They were, of course, painted, and some paint can still be seen when you look closely on them. Like maybe you can see a little bit of the red paint on this one. Now, these actually would not have been seen in the final construction phase of this building. So this is, I believe, the second to last level, and so it would have been covered in the last stage of construction. The Feather Serpent building dates to after 250 CE. The Feather Serpent is also known as Quetzalcoatl and is associated with the sky, water, snake, bird, and Venus the morning star. The earliest depiction of this deity was found in Olmec art. It's later going to be found in Aztec art. Forms of a feathered serpent can be found in North America, particularly in the Southwest with the Anasazi and Membres cultures. There were sacrificial burials found at the site, so we do know that the people of Teotihuacan did practice human sacrifice. Okay, so we have the feathered serpent, as we saw up here, and here he is over here, and you can actually see like his body going off this way. And then we also have the face of Talik. And Talik is the rain god, the lightning god, the god of war, among other things. He's also known as the war serpent. He and the feathered serpent may be symbols of regeneration and the cylindrical renewal cycle. Mass burials were found at the site, men and women, but mainly men, and many were dressed as warriors. Again, this is another site that's really interesting to read about, and if you end up studying anybody in, like if you're particularly into Aztec art, this is really a culture that feeds into the Aztecs. The Aztecs sort of view these people as their like sacred ancestors, and they actually come back to Teotihuacan and loot it and take a lot of stuff to their site at Tenochtitlan. But unfortunately for Teotihuacan, in the mid-8th century, disaster struck. The ceremonial center was burned. The city went into permanent decline, but its influence did continue, particularly, like I said, with the Aztecs and really northern Mesoamerica. As I mentioned, it was a very important site to the Aztecs. It became a legendary pilgrimage center. It also impacted Tula and probably Chichen Itza as well. It was thought by the Aztecs to have been the place where the gods created the sun and the moon. And in Teotihuacan actually means in Nahuatl, which is the language that the Aztecs spoke, the gathering place of the gods. So clearly a very important site, even to modern Mexico today, to natives in that region.